Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hello.
I think today we are without Martin, yeah?
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Oh, I see the whole gang together. Hello, how are you all?
Hello, Martin.
Yes,
Good to see you. We thought that you will not join us today.
because of my birthday.
Exactly.
No, it's always a great pleasure to do this, and I have always so much to do. I had a meeting today with a client, and we went to see a potential customer and cooperation partner for a very cool invention. And then they were also wondering why I do this on my birthday. And I said, this is really a pleasure for me to do some innovation support. And so it's not a punishment and not a duty, but it's really part of what I yeah, like doing most, I would say. So yeah, I really enjoy to be here because we are quite international group. Christoph from China, Carl and Michael from US, Jürgen from Germany, and um, Roland from Germany. Oh, Christoph, you're not from Germany. You're from China, actually, currently.
Yeah, calling in from China.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, and I'm in Singapore. And yeah, I mean, we start right. So like we can meander down what I wanted to say. I had two things to talk about. Um, the the number one is as we have you here, Christoph from China. There is a guy. I don't know where he lives. Is a German with a very distinct face and glasses on YouTube, and he is friend with the head of the BMW team in China. And he takes them out for lunch, and after the lunch, in his car, he is recording a video about what they just talked about in during lunchtime. And there was one very dramatic video, and I believe Christoph, you even commented on that one on LinkedIn, but I'm not sure. And what he said is that the costs for making a new BMW in China and making the same BMW in Germany, identical models, they are almost the same. He says that yes, the payroll is a bit less, yes, and but there are other costs, and there are not so many subs subsidies but paid by the government as people think. So the car industry in China is not really subsidized as other industries, or maybe as it was years ago. So he says the difference between the high purchase price of the BMW in Germany and the comparatively lower purchase price of the identical BMW in China is because they need to sell it for such a low price in China in order to sell the car. So it has to do with competition and market and not so much with production costs. So the margin in Germany is much higher than the margin in China. And that, I find that surprising. But as he's talking with the leadership of BMW in China and in German language, I believe him. So what do you say, Christoph? Is it really that BMW makes a fortune in Germany while they're making not a fortune in China?
I also don't really know. I can only speculate.
Ah,
But I think what would add to the discussion is the level of automatization in the factory.
yes, this is also
So
what he said. Yes.
yeah, if you look into, for example, the Foshan VW factory here,
Hmm.
they are up to more than 90% fully automated as a factory, and they produce all the EV cars for the Chinese market. And when we were visiting their factory, it is basically, yeah, no people inside, and from the raw material to the finished car, more than 90%, maybe up to 97% fully automated. And then if you compare that maybe with a German factory, where also some factories have a very high automatization, then the labor cost basically doesn't really matter too much.
Yes.
And then you maybe only have the energy cost, and then yeah, basically just the capex for the whole installation of the assembly line, and that is more or less the same.
Yes. So I mean, essentially he said, yes, of course, maybe the costs are 10% less or so, but it's not really the problem. And he also said that the wages and payroll is irrelevant because they don't have many people there. And the cost of the factories, the depreciation is higher because the factories are all new. While in Germany, factories in average are 15 years old. And and yeah, so they're all depreciated already fully. So um, yeah, so the production costs in China are comparatively higher than the equivalent production costs in Germany, because in Germany there's no more depreciation. And but also as you said, less automation because a newer factory would be more automated than an old one. And yeah, so ultimately, in Germany you can tell, or in Europe, I would bet on lower car prices when the competition comes in from the foreign manufacturers. And I heard that Chinese companies uh, are working more in Europe, but of course not from Germany because this is a high wage country and has other problems with red tape and so, but from other. And then once these are within the EU, then there is no more tariff, and you can ship a very cheap car from Spain to Germany and then use Chinese technology to build BMW great cars there. So, and then compete with the German manufacturers in Germany. And also, once, as you say, I find this critical. Um, the the Chinese factories tend to do the more of the work from the beginning to the end on premise as compared with the German factories who have outsourced a lot to suppliers. And when you have suppliers, two or three for the same car model, and they make parts, then they can not only complement each other when one cannot supply anymore for some reason, but also there would be a price competition. And you don't have that price competition if you make everything yourself on premise in the factory. And it seems to me that this is the case in China.
May I give you some thoughts on that?
Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, it is correct that a car manufacturer earns more money in Germany as somewhere else. And the same effect, like the Chinese car prices, we have already for centuries in the US. In the US, the cars are much cheaper, because of competition. That's number one.
Uh-huh.
But I would like to warn you of making a fortune. This is not the truth. Even with German cars, in Germany, the cars, they barely break even when they build electric vehicles.
Okay.
Barely break even. So it's not making a fortune. So it is more interesting or the car manufacturers are hoping that they don't sell too many electric vehicles.
Uh-huh.
It's the other way around. The only thing why they have to sell them is the EU regulation. Again, my best friends, because they give you goals on carbon dioxide emissions. What the fleet has to fulfill. They take all the vehicles and add how much emissions. So when you have like an S class with a lot of emissions, you also need an electric vehicle with zero emissions. It's total bullshit that electric vehicles have zero emissions, but they calculate it with zero.
Okay.
So, and the EU also has now requirements on recycled material. The European car manufacturers have to have a certain amount of recycled material in the vehicle. They have to grind recycled plastics in and so on. So what adds tremendously to the cost, because a pure material has different properties
Yes.
than a
Yes.
mixed material. So
Yes.
everything has to be requalified. Fuck them. Sorry, my French.
Yeah. Yes. Rich, you want to come in? China?
No, I'm just really sort of listening. That's, I was just thinking that in the U.S. we have what they call the CAFE standards, right? Which are, basically, the requirements for the fleet to manufacturer's fleet of cars and trucks to meet mileage standards, etc. So, and that was for, a internal combustion engine, and now, the carbon credits and all that stuff, frankly, I just don't pay attention to, and
Of course.
I have little knowledge in that space.
And you drive a 4.5 liter Jeep, a 6-cylinder or 8-cylinder?
My Jeep is a 6-cylinder 3.6.
Okay. Yeah, still not bad. 3.6 is useful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great vehicle.
Yeah, of course. I can see. No, I mean, I saw that, and the question is, if you're part of that was actually the first thought that came to my mind when I heard that the margin for internal combustion engine cars in Germany is higher than the comparable margin for the same car in China. And I was thinking, if I were a supplier to the car industry, then I would say, why am I accepting working for such a meager price when they make all the profit? So by me saving, by me going bankrupt, all what I would do is just salvage or make the life of those unwise guys longer, prolong the life of those unwise guys, to be very polite. And I would even then think stop working, because it's only a matter of months or years until you have to close your own doors. Because as we found out, the Swiss watch industry in the last century died out, and together with it, all the suppliers. And all what is left are the few famous, a handful famous companies, and Rolex being the biggest of them with worldwide 9,000 employees. And so now if you extrapolate, would then BMW Germany also only have 9,000 people, and plus 18,000, a factor of 3 out there in the suppliers industry. That was
Do
my
you have the slightest idea how much the margin in the automotive is? For the OEM?
Yeah, it's single digit.
5%.
shit.
And BMW is doing very well compared to the others. 5%. Do you know what a typical margin of a tier 1 supplier is?
No.
3%.
Oh,
So now think again.
then the tier 2, 2%, and tier 3, 1%.
The chip manufacturer is in the range of 25%.
Okay. So it depends on what you do. Okay, but
Yes, sir.
what I can tell you is that very, 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 very few, if any, chip suppliers on German soil. So, yeah.
That's correct. I can send you a wonderful report why the German chip manufacturing went belly up back in the days.
Okay.
How they did it. I will send this to you. This is brilliant.
Okay. So
Anybody else interested?
Yes, I am.
why don't
Okay.
you post it in public in the 4x4 group on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm looking right now to find it.
Yeah. And of course, but can you summarize for us in a few words what is about?
Yeah, how stupid they set everything up, all the dependencies, and then even the sheikhs in Saudi Arabia came in, and they also demanded that a chip manufacturing factory has to be set up, I think, in Dubai, and so enjoy. This is unbelievable story.
Okay.
So Martin, going back to the Swiss watch thing.
Yes.
I went back and took a look at some information that I had, and the gentleman that I was thinking of, that his name escaped me, was Nicholas Hayek.
Okay.
Sorry.
And Nicholas he was a consultant. He ran a Hayek Engineering Ltd in Zurich, and became involved in the watch industry, through a company called ASS UAG SSIH, which was a conglomeration of a company that made movements, and they made watch parts, and then they made finished timepieces.
Okay.
And then in the late 70s, early 80s, of course, the onslaught of Japan and the quartz technology, and the U.S. with Timex,
Yes.
entering the low cost, arena, virtually killed the Swiss watch industry, right?
Okay.
Like virtually overnight. But what's interesting here is that Hayek and two of his colleagues, a man named Arnold and Tomke, those three guys, basically were and recognized as the saviors of the Swiss watch industry, because they teamed together. They came up with the concept and the vision for what turned out to be the Swatch,
The Swatch, yes.
which I mentioned to you and here on last
Okay,
week's.
yeah, but you know what I forgot? Swatch is Swiss, is not Japanese or Chinese.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what
Yeah.
would, yeah, sorry to interrupt you. Sorry. I will continue later. Sorry.
So, as they came up with this vision to battle the Japanese specifically, they had 5 rules of engagement. The first one was that the product must have style. Number 2, must be cheap to make,
Mm-hmm.
priced competitively,
Mm-hmm.
or to be durable, and established a technological lead. And that became the vision for the Swatch, right?
Yeah.
They launched the Swatch in 1983.
Yes, I remember.
And it was the rage, right? Because they tied the style and mirrored the fashion preferences of the day, right? Very nicely.
And I remember that they were known as the plastic watches because
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
the
shell.
the sprockets were made from plastic.
Yeah.
And
So lastly, what's during this change of these guys Watch, etc., they changed the name of the company to SMH. SMH today is known as the Swatch Group Limited, and they're based in Biel, Switzerland.
Okay.
And they own Omega, Rado, Longines, Hamilton,
Okay.
Certina, Tissot, and Mito. Those brands.
Mm-hmm. All tier 2 Swiss brands, I would say, except for Omega. Omega is tier 1.
Well, Omega, I mean, you could argue Omega and Rado and Longines are certainly.
Yeah, but they're not in the high price group, of course.
Well,
So,
no. They're not.
The minimum is $5,000 for a watch. Omega.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not 50,000. Or today I was at the insurer about this new invention I told you when I came in, and they insure watches with $500,000. They just had a case because someone lost a $500,000 watch at poker in Las Vegas. How to lose a $500,000 watch at playing poker in Las Vegas? Yeah. So, but Omega certainly doesn't sell $500,000 watches. They're expensive, but
No, and Breitling doesn't either. So, but let me just one last couple comments here. So when you look at what Swatch did and bringing back the frenzy of an innovative product and being able to capture the market very quick with innovation through innovation.
Yes.
And then they've bought all these brands, right? And each of these brands were in trouble at some point, and they brought them into the family of the Swatch Group today, and they're by far the largest watch producer and movement producer within Switzerland.
Oh. Just in the sideline, I'm a fan of Timex watches. I really love them. And I had all the watches that you can imagine, not for 100,000, but for 40,000. And I have given up all this, and I go for my cheap quartz watches, even without a second hand. And my favorites is the Timex. Because if they don't work anymore, you throw them away, and then you get a new one. So that's also a niche. And Timex is not for collectors, while the plastic swatches can become very expensive. The early ones with the plastic movement from 1983, couple of $1,000. And if of course must be mint grade or something like that. So yeah, but if we transfer this to cars now, so how?
I just posted the watch I bought.
What watch did you buy?
It's in I already put the links for the YouTube in there, and also the link to the watch I'm in no, on the market.
Okay. Okay, so you can, but that's something like an LCD display and it's not mechanical, right? Is a
No.
okay. Yeah, I like the one with the hands, but I find it funny that it looks like a meter. I like
This looks like a typical German no,
power meter.
power meter.
Yeah, yeah, sure. And the price is $4.33. $3.
Oh, damn it. I paid €8 for it.
Okay. Wow, poor guy. Okay, I see. Yeah, but what do we derive from all this for the car industry? I don't know. Especially for the German car industry, because that brings me to my main theme, because this week I had a discussion with Jürgen Brügel, he's here, and I have the following problem. I have a client, and they do cosmetics, quite expensive cosmetics, and they can feel the competition, and the problem is that they don't really have non-incremental innovation. So we were discussing this, and then Jürgen introduced me to his method, and I carefully watched it. I wrote it up, and then I looked around a bit, and the first one who came to my mind, to whom I would need to present this is you, Rich, because um, maybe I recapitulate what Jürgen told me. Or Jürgen, do you want to tell me what you would suggest? So let's assume you have a cosmetics company and you want to bring that we talked about another company. I don't want to
Yeah, we
discuss
talked
it.
a totally different company.
Yes, but now let's brainstorm a bit, because your thing was your first step would be I have a company, and ultimately it doesn't really matter, right? What the company is doing, what is the core,
Mhm.
and you are looking at something that is non-incremental, something new, um, more from a consumer perspective, what they want, but also within reach of that company. So it's not adding something that lies very far, like manufacturing in the outer space or so, but something that can be brought in from outside, like rich transfer innovation, or some say have other expressions. So from a neighboring field that can be integrated, but not so easily, so that you need to have some and and uh, and you suggested to put together a team of highly creative people from all possible areas, and then lock them up for a weekend, and then they come out with a large number of good ideas that already went through a few iterations. And did I summarize it correctly, Jürgen?
Yes, correctly. The thing is, don't use experts. No, have different ages, have
Uh-huh.
and total different backgrounds.
Uh-huh. Sounds
Take
yeah.
die Hausfrau, the housewife, as well as if you can get your hands on it, the typical customer of these products, but those usually don't work.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to, in this case, you have very first step is understand your customer. I explained it on the ideas for Rolls-Royce. Okay. None of my colleagues has a Rolls-Royce in his garage, so we had to find out what does a Rolls-Royce driver want. So, and first of all, there are total different Rolls-Royce drivers. The first thing what comes in mind is the Earl from with his with the Duchess from so and so. Yeah, yeah, some of them. Then who else? Well, the rich Chinese self-made guy who wants to take his parents for rides. Then who else? Yes, the sheikhs in Saudi Arabia. Wonderful. But then different areas came up. For example, what is this? Ruffles, I think. The hotel in
Singapore.
Singapore. They have the largest Rolls-Royce fleet on Earth. They have different needs, and my favorite one was 50 Cent, this rapper.
A musician, a singer.
Yeah, yeah, okay. From the ghetto.
Okay.
So now you have you hang the different characters up and make a little brainstorming. What is their life? What is their daily life? What do they like? Yeah, well, and then they need attention. And then the other thing with cosmetic, I mean, you might think okay. The women, 99% don't pay this out of their own wages. So
You mean
they don't care.
you want to say someone else will pay?
Yes, they don't care how much it costs. It's important that somehow they can say, I'm using that.
Yeah.
So and if you look at the tests from the products from Aldi, the super discounter, are most of the time the winners in these tests compared to anything. And I have seen tiny little pots, $500 and more, and they buy this. They have to go into the Maximilianstraße. They have to be seen. They have to have this bag, this no, not plastic bag, but you know what I mean, the shopping bag, where everybody sees, it comes. So if this manufacturer would, for example, have their own shopping bags,
Yeah.
you know.
But believe me, they have. But what I have in mind, sorry to interrupt you for the, what I found, what really stuck out was that you reject the linear bureaucratic model of innovation, and you replace it by something that rejects those committees and layers of approval and delayed decision making, and instead you go for early and cheap prototype and try out inexpensively and fast with materials under 500 euros, and thereby reducing risk and allow early learning, and then find and frame the right model. Probably this is where this identifying the different consumer groups come in, and involving the end user directly, and that's understanding the problem, right? And this is where you suggest bring in people from various disciplines and ages and background. and ultimately ignore corporate politics. And
Definitely.
yeah, and that's what you're aiming at, right? You 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 put these 10 people together over a period of 2 or 3 days, and then you come out with a lot of ideas, and that would be the basis for what to do. This is what I understood, correct?
Definitely. I
Yeah.
mean, in the cosmetic industry, money doesn't count.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for Aldi, money does count.
Yes.
But for these high-priced things, I mean,
Yeah.
when
The
you know how to make your own mayonnaise, it's
yeah,
just oil and
but
water.
and this is where I thought about after our meet. I tried to word something like because I will talk with a company we talked about next week.
Okay.
Right? So I thought, what do I put together for them? And then I thought, yeah, okay, they may be willing to pay the 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 compensation for 10 people for 2 or 3 days, plus the expenses to travel there and spend the weekend in a luxury hotel. And but the problem is, once this thing sits on the table as a PowerPoint model, a PowerPoint, or maybe even some models that you or drawings or whatever, then what's next? And and I believe for many companies it would be difficult to deal with such proposals because then someone has to put them into practice and
Okay.
try
First
out,
of
right?
all, first, I'm done in a second. Have one of these team members presenting these ideas to the company. Don't hand it over to anyone who was not involved in these ideas, because these ideas have a history. They came they came out of these and these thoughts, what can't be relayed on a PowerPoint. Okay, I'm done.
Sure. Yeah, but then how? And
So,
Rich, yes.
Martin, what Jurgen is describing is very similar to a model, an innovation model that Eric von Hippel at MIT sort of fathered,
Mm.
and um, he worked with
Design thinking, right?
no, at least it wasn't called that at the time.
Okay.
And he worked with a lady that attended MIT that was a chief scientist at 3M company. And basically, they worked with 3M on a project. And that project basically was following, a very similar blueprint as to what Jurgen just described. They brought in people from the outside world. Now, in their case, though, they did use experts, and and this was for 3M Surgical, was the sponsoring division, and they brought in a number of different people from a wide range of walks of life, and 3M Surgical was looking for different ideas for sterilization, different ideas for wound repair, that type of thing. So one of the things that sort of in this case study that I read and some of the information that I learned later was that stuck out to me was that they did bring in experts to counter what Jurgen just mentioned. And one of the things that they did in that was they brought in makeup artists, right? And those makeup artists, and that sort of relates right back to your cosmetic company, scenario. They brought in these makeup artists to basically, comment about the use of different types of materials used for making people look different for the movies, right? And whether they be in a horror picture, whether they be in a an airplane accident or a traffic accident, or in a wounded soldier in a war movie, what have you, right? So they had all these different inputs on that, and what they came away with was a new and unique sterile curtain, if you would, and a sterile field initiative that they developed. They also developed some very unique sutures out of that effort, etc. So it was extremely successful, right? And basically that model is pretty well understood. It's well documented, and it's again very successful. Now, going back to your cosmetics thing, I think Jürgen does have some really good points about bringing in people from outside. They don't need to be experts, but I'm just comparing and contrasting that with the experts that 3M used, where they were all experts, and they did the same thing. They brought them in for an extended period. I think in their case it was like 4 days. So they did it during the week as opposed to over a weekend. But I mean, you could set that up differently, and making the transition from the idea state that's generated out of that into transmitting that information to the management team. I think that it's important to have somebody that, or one or two people from the company there, certainly present during these meetings. And, that entire process, that has an open mind, right? And doesn't have blinders to outside ideas that tries to kill them right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I love the makeup artist. That's a great idea. I would invite such a person as well for the cosmetics.
Yeah, most definitely. And one of the things, I've got 3 daughters, so I bought a lot of makeup and perfume in my life. So
yeah, okay. Now the thing is the following, that so bad that Bruce Wojcik is not here, because he's promoting this hourglass model, which is a iterative approach where you have one dominant serial innovator, which is a guy who has a history of innovating, who would see things before others see it. And he may probably like this in the beginning, but at one point in time, he wants to find the right product by following his instincts and trying out things in a hourglass model approach, which means that you iteratively try out whether you are solving a problem that the people are willing to pay for. And is it the right problem that you put your effort and money in, so, and time, and I miss that because it stops at a very early time, Jürgen. So, and it doesn't take into account whether or not there is somebody who could pick up the ball and go from there. So I believe that for an initial meeting where we find out or identify 10 potential products for the CTO or the owner of the company, yes, I believe that works. But what I believe what is missing is some sort of a gated process towards the final product, and each gate can be an iteration, and that's where you come in, Rich, because you said we don't want iterations, because that means we pivot, and a pivot is very expensive, and you don't want that. So you want to know where you go, and you can plan and go from there. So that
no, hang on. The pivot is totally different than what you're describing. I've never disagreed with iterations at all.
okay.
The pivot is costly and it's timely. I mean,
Okay.
it absorbs a lot of cost and time. And when you pivot, that means, basically you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? Because
Okay.
often that takes you down.
Tag, servus miteinander.
It takes you
Servus,
down.
Billy.
What?
Hey, Martin.
Yeah, sorry, is a friend of mine. I invited him the first time today. Hi, Willy. Let me explain. This is a group of innovators, and we discuss certainly about what Rich was about to explain a pivot. Sorry to be that you got interrupted. Are you still here, Rich?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Go on.
So, the pivot, it can be, dramatic, right? I mean, it can be from, we're focusing on a solution for excavators, and now we're going to focus on an application or a solution that's going to be applied to, a people moving, product, right?
Mm.
Versus an excavator, moving dirt or, some kind of metals, rocks or whatever, aggregate.
Yes.
So, a pivot is, just, very dramatic to the organization. I mean, it's a change of direction, it's a change of market, it's a change of customer. And that can be extremely, confusing. It can be extremely costly and timely.
Yeah. So what would you? Where's the boundary between pivot and iteration?
Well, an iteration, basically is, I mean, if we talk about, the shoe industry as an example, right? If we take a look at, a woman's shoe, there's what they call flats, right? Where, there's no heel.
Yes.
And then, an iteration would be going to, some kind of a heel. And then another iteration would be going to a high heel, kind of a thing, right?
Yes.
So that's an iteration. A pivot would be going from making flats to, I'm going to get into the cosmetics industry.
So truly non-incremental and breakthrough, breakout, and whatever. Something that is really,
Yeah, it can be.
yeah.
Can be.
You would be
very-
surprised that's what I see is when startups start with one product. I see that quite often. And I need to be a bit careful here because if I say too much, you would be able to identify. But I have so many, and let me just invent something for you. Let's say they start out with what do I see in front of me? A dispenser for essential oils, a nebulizer or something, right? And then and then suddenly they found out nobody wants their product for some reason. And instead of starting an iteration, finding out what is the problem that the people really want to have solved, like the hourglass model or any other iteration, then suddenly they find out, oh, it would be so cool if you now go into essential oils because that has to do with what they do. But making essential oils is so much different from building the devices that they dispense into the air as a fine fog or mist. And then the essential oils don't work, and they say, oh, now let's go into the transport business of how to transport chemical materials like essential oils. And then and all that within a year and a half. And then I see that clearly from the patent applications that they file. And they always have an excuse or or an explanation, if you want so. Yes, it's still in the same business, but we talk with the same people, but they don't realize that they are going across the board from, as you said, right, from high heels to what was the example that you brought up? I don't know. I forgot already.
From flats to heels to high heels. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and high heels is the pivot or what? No.
No, that's just the iteration, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those are those are two iterations within the shoe industry, is going
Yes.
from a lady's flat shoe to a heeled shoe to a high heeled shoe.
And then the breakout would
And then a pivot would be that same company saying, okay, we're going to pivot into, making cosmetics. Right?
yeah, making cosmetics. Okay, still has the same consumer group, right? Namely, mostly women, I would say. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but so the same for the startup that I have in mind, right? Going from essential oil dispensers producing mist to essential oils to devices for transporting essential oils.
Yeah, I did in my first one of my first consulting gigs. This is 12 years ago, 13 years ago. I did a project in skin lotion for women. It was a startup in California, and that was pretty interesting. And it was a target consumer group that was 20 to 35 was their primary target end user.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that that you may want to recommend that they do is not only do this just group with just women, right, for the cosmetic arena, but also in just getting feedback and do that weekend brainstorming thing, but then also have a different one for men. And the reason I say that is that there's all this, I shouldn't say all, but there's some activity in men starting to use makeup, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a huge market, right? If men ever adopted it. And it would be very interesting to understand what are those industry dynamics behind men and the use of potential cosmetics, being a
What's the story behind? Why? What does this cosmetic make me better looking, better smelling, better whatever? The dream. You have to sell a dream,
right.
and not a product.
Okay, from my experience, cosmetic companies don't sell dreams; they sell hope.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm serious. This is not invented.
Yeah. No, you're.
That was the first thing I had to learn. Yeah, they sell hope. And
but
yeah,
Jürgen mentioned the Rolls-Royce thing, earlier, and sort of gave us some background on that, which was interesting. But the thing that stuck out in my mind during his description was with the Rolls-Royce, people aren't driving those, the owners, they're riders. So that's an entirely different perspective than driving, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have different Rolls-Royce, and the Spectre, for example, is a driver's car.
Yeah, I understand, but the driver isn't typically the owner, is what I'm saying.
No, you have the wrong impression in this case. We certainly consulted the marketing people and so on and so forth. So it's rare that the driver has that the owner has a driver. Very rare. This is what is in our heads when we think about Rolls-Royce and so on. Sure, the Sheikh has a driver, or the Lord so and so might have a driver, but this changed totally. There are much more people who drive these cars themselves. So that means aus Freude am Fahren is German, or joy of driving. This was a slogan for BMW always, but this also has to be for Rolls-Royce. And
Yeah,
very important, we had to
it is. And that's
a lot of things in for make them a better driver.
Yeah, I don't know, Jürgen. You're the car expert. I'm not. So I'm only giving you a perspective, but that's interesting. If that shift has occurred, then that's a monumental shift, right, in the marketing, which I'm not saying hasn't happened at all. I'm just saying that's interesting that something like that did take place, because I would have thought that all those groups that you just described, the common element to me was the owner isn't the driver. So anyway, going back to the cosmetics thing, Martin, is that
Yes.
Just having those two kinds of working groups within a men's focused and then a women's focused,
Yes.
could yield some pretty interesting opportunities.
Yeah, I believe so. I clearly believe so. So the thing is only how to put something together that people would buy and would also be a success then ultimately. And I have a bit of how to say bellyache when I think about making a company pay, let's say $100,000, and then we leave them alone with a bunch of ideas in whatever form they are presented and by whom and so, and then not further following up, plugging into the R&D process, and also taking part in all the iterations that are there, and preventing them from pivoting when they say, oh, there's another shiny object over there, and I would now want to go change the industry as long as the targets are more or less the same. So there should be more. There should also be some sort of guidance for them, showing them the traps and
Well, the program just needs to be laid out in such a way that it's a series of steps that they
Yes.
need to understand that they need to go through.
Yeah.
And there's coaching that needs to take place, on each of those steps, right?
Yeah. And shouldn't that coaching also have then a component that they're coached to have more than just one group developing things, so that there's at least some how to say some
Yeah, it all depends on the company, and it all depends on this, the situation, and the sense of urgency, and also funding and everything else, right? I mean, to me, what you would want to end up with is, like 10 ideas.
Yes.
And then, you need to work through those ideas to the point of, you're either going to kill them, you're going to put them on hold, you're going to put them into a recycle mode where, you need to relook at the information in some way, reevaluate it, and then come back to the team and say, hey, we did this reevaluation, and we think now that we've got these answers, we can move forward, or hey, we came to the conclusion we're going to kill it, or we just basically put it in the parking lot. We don't know where that's going to go, but we don't want to lose it, so we're going to put it in the parking lot, let it sit. All right.
And how do you put that? I mean, we don't have much time left, but I really would like to give this to you because you have most insight in that. You always say that everything that is needed for a successful product can be found out before starting the development by asking the relevant customers. And how does that come in? Should that be a part of the?
Well, that's part of the second, third step is
Yes.
that this ideation stage, as you're describing, using, a group, some people would call that a focus group, right?
Yes.
I would call it a working group. And basically just, to bring ideas in from a wide range of people, as Jürgen's
Okay.
mentioned. And, basically just, look at, different product concepts, right? And then, is there anything reasonable here, to act on?
I don't think this is much different than the Ansoff matrix of risk, where you can define the risk of missed opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah, that sort of comes in later.
Yeah.
But
So I can see that this works best if you have a stable domain, well-known user behaviors, and more, not so much
No.
non-incremental improvements, and more towards incremental.
no, that's not true.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, that means yeah. Yeah, so you think that you can catch all those by having casting a wide net, so that you get in those in this work group, then having people from a wide range of potential customers.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some research that needs to be done up front,
Okay.
right? What we would refer to as secondary research, and
Okay.
that would be, just getting an understanding of the industry dynamics, and understanding of the position that the company's in, and understanding their competitors, and
Okay.
understanding where their competitors are heading, to as much as possible. And maybe that's a 3-week process, right, in itself. And then organizing a working group for the female side of the business, and
Yeah.
then a potential what I would see as a radical innovation group, that would be guys, right?
Yes.
And just understanding that. But you would need to do some, for the man side of it, you would have to do some significant survey work to understand, from a larger population than just 10 people, or 5 people or whatever that you would have at this working group, so that you would have that data, the support,
Yes.
the directions that these guys may want to go in, and you may want to give them some of that information up front,
Mm-hmm.
help steer the conversations. But
Yeah, sure. Depends also whether they're willing to read all this when they already come in, when they think that they know everything already. So, yeah.
yeah, there's certainly that. But
Yeah.
it's an interesting scenario, Martin, if they're willing to pay, and to take the time to do it.
Yeah. I'm closer to that. You would be surprised. I also have some feedback for you, but offline, about a company we talked about. Quite interesting. But we have reached the end of our hour. I thank you so much. That was a very wonderful birthday present for me. Thank you. That was a very valuable talk. And I see you next week, I hope. And thank you again. Have a good day, or good night, or good morning. Goodbye.
Take care.
Bye. Happy
Bye-bye.
birthday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Happy birthday.
Bye.
Bye-bye.